Well, Michael McCormack, welcome to the program. Let's start with the leadership question. Do you have any intention of standing down as leader during this parliamentary term?
No, I do not, David, and I will lead the National Party to the next election.
So what do you make then of the report in the Australian newspaper this weekend that leading Nationals and Liberals, coalition leaders it said, now believe you must step down for the survival of the party?
Well, I don't believe that report, and I haven't thought it, I haven't said it, and I'm not quite sure why it was written in that way. Fact is, I'm the leader, and I'm going to lead the Nationals to the next election.
Have you spoken to the Prime Minister or any Liberals about this story?
I have his full support. The Prime Minister and I speak every day, David, as you would imagine, and I have his full support. Spoke to him this morning, but leadership wasn't the topic of our conversation this morning. It was coronavirus, it was other issues, mainly important to regional Australians, because that's my focus.
Are you seriously saying you're not talking about your leadership with the Prime Minister right now?
No, I'm not. No, absolutely. I have the Prime Minister's full support. He said that privately. He said that publicly. I've got his full support. Why wouldn't I have? We work well together. We work well together as Liberals and Nationals. We lead different, separate parties, but we lead them in government. And last May, the people of Australia elected the Liberals and the Nationals to govern them, and that's what we're doing.
I hear your determination to stay on and fight the next election as leader, but you are facing a concerted campaign, it seems, to force you out. Do you see that? Do you accept that? And what are you going to do about that?
Well, I've now put myself to the party room as a leader 3 times in less than 2 years. And 3 times in less than 2 years I've been endorsed as the party's leader. So that should be enough to draw a line under that discussion. What we need to focus on is not ourselves.
Michael McCormack, it's not stopping what's going on here, is it?
Well, Barnaby Joyce has stated that he will support me. Matthew Canavan has, and others have as well.
Do you believe them?
So, well, I always believe country people when they look me in the eye and say something, and you've got to take people on their word. You've got to know that when country people look you in the eye and give you an assurance that's what they mean.
Can I ask you this? Do you intend to change anything about the way you lead, your leadership style, perhaps your policy position at all, in response to what's been going on, or will you just keep going the way you've been going?
Well, I think we can always take the free, frank and sometimes even unfiltered advice that we receive, and we always need to be better than what we've been in the past. I'm not perfect. I've never stated that I am, but certainly when it comes to policy, the National Party are as one. We're as one on making sure that there's more reliable,
I'll come to policy.
Energy.
I'll come to that, but what will you change? Sure. If you're willing to take on the free and unfiltered advice, what's going to change?
Well, as David Gillespie said, more inclusivity needs to happen, and my door is always open to my colleagues. My door is always open.
So what's that going to look like?
They know that because
being more inclusive, what's that going to look like?
Well, we always discuss things as a party. We make sure that for us, the delivery for regional Australians has to be first and foremost. And whether that's me changing my leadership style a little bit, I think every one of us in the National Party room needs to stop concentrating on those things that we're discussing in Canberra as far as power and self-indulgence, and make sure that we get back to our electorates and concentrate on the things which matter to the people we represent.
Okay, but let me just tease this out.
Better healthcare.
If you're going to be more inclusive, does this mean more cups of tea in the office, or does it mean bringing in some of your critics to the front bench?
Well, a bit of both, I think. When it comes to the front bench, I'm very happy with those who I selected for those ministerial roles. And certainly they are going to do a good job. I'm blessed with talent in the National Party room, and I'm very thankful for that. I've got some tremendous people who are fighters for regional Australia.
Are you willing to bring in those who voted against you?
Well, the ministry is what the ministry is at the moment, David, and there's no plans to have a ministerial change anytime soon. But of course, politics is an interesting game, and as we've seen just over the last fortnight, things can change. But for the moment, for the time being, and leading up to the next election, I'm very, very happy with the ministers that have been chosen. I know Keith Pitter's going to do an outstanding job in resources, Northern Australia and water. I know Kevin Hogan, who's been elevated to the ministry, also deserves his opportunity to represent regional Australia around the full ministerial table.
Let me ask you about the leadership rules. As you know, Labor and the Liberal Party, they've both changed their rules to make it harder to turf out a leader. And this was in both cases driven by the leader. Kevin Rudd demanded changes in the Labor Party and got his way. Scott Morrison demanded changes in the Liberal Party and got his way. Is it time for you to do the same in the National Party?
Well, I think that'll be a matter for the party and the federal management of the party. And Dr Anne Webster... Well, I think that might look a little bit self-indulgent and me trying to just protect the leadership. I think that should be decided.
Is that how you saw it when Scott Morrison? I've got to ask, is that what Scott Morrison was doing?
Well, Scott Morrison's the leader of the Liberal Party, and I'm not in the Liberal Party. I don't wish to be. I'm the leader of the National Party. We do things differently in the National Party. And Dr Anne Webster took a proposal and canvassed it amongst some colleagues. I thought the proposal had merit, but that's a matter for the party room and a matter for the federal management as well.
What about the Lou O'Brien situation here? He's no longer in the National Party, but he's still sitting as an LNP member. Can I ask what you think about this and whether he should be endorsed by the LNP at the next election? If he's not willing to be part of either the National Liberal Party team in Canberra, where it counts, should he be an LNP member?
Well, the LNP are not a separate party in their own right. They are in Queensland. Of course, the LNP is its own brand in Queensland. The Liberals and the Nationals merged there some 10 or so years ago. And that was for the benefit of Queensland. Dave Hutchinson, the LNP president, and I have spoken. He doesn't want them to be forming their own party in Canberra. Lou O'Brien, I went to his electorate on Friday. We had a great day. We opened the Sunshine Beach Surf Lifesaving Club. It was a really good day out, and no one would have known, apart from the events of the previous week or so, that there was any angst whatsoever between us. We remain good friends.
Okay, but
Sharon
should he be allowed...
Remain good friends.
I'm sure that's the case, but should he be allowed to be an LNP member is what I'm getting at here. This is unprecedented. Should it continue?
Well, perhaps most importantly, David, he's a member of the government. A member of the government, the Liberals and Nationals government, delivering for Australians, and most importantly,
but he's not sitting in any party room in Canberra, and I'm just asking whether you think this should be allowed, whether he should still be allowed to be an LNP member.
Yeah, well, Kevin Hogan did this prior to the last election, as you might recall. He went and sat with the crossbenchers, but sat as an independent Nationals member. And I appreciate from time to time that different members have different views on government policy and certainly what goes on in Canberra. The fact is, and this is an important fact, Lou O'Brien remains a member of the government and will vote with the government. He's now the
Sounds like you've got no objection to
this.
Sounds like you've got no objection to the LNP endorsing someone in this situation.
Well, of course, I'd prefer him to sit with the Nationals, but for the time being, he's chosen to sit as an LNP member, but most importantly, as a government member.
Let's talk about policy. Should the government help fund a new coal-fired power station in Collinsville?
Well, I'm really pleased that we've put $4 million on the table for a feasibility study into a Healey plant at Collinsville. Now, Collinsville is a really important place because it is going to feed into that heavy resource sector and heavy industrial city of Gladstone in central Queensland. Now, there's a lot of energy requirements in Gladstone, and the plant at Urana and the one at Collinsville forming hydroelectricity and Healey coal is going to be really important for Gladstone going forward. This is
so
just
it should go
a
ahead.
Feasibility study.
It should go ahead in your view?
Well, if it ticks all the boxes, of course it should go ahead. I mean, we want to make sure that when it comes to energy needs, that it's affordable, reliable, but it's technology, not taxation, David. That's the important thing. The Labor way, the Greens way, is just to whack a cost on everything. What we want to make sure is that we've got a reliable and affordable mix of energy technologies.
What's your position on the idea of a net zero emissions target by 2050?
What we want to make sure is that affordable, reliable power is there for families, for households, for farmers, for factories and industries. What I don't want to see happen is our industries and our farmers being forced offshore, having to import food like there was no tomorrow. What I want to make sure is that Australians have the cleanest, greenest vegetables and grain and produce available on our farms, but that our farmers can do it in the most reliable way, cost-efficient way, and certainly making sure that they have affordable electricity. That's the important thing.
Okay, is there any chance you'd support this target of net zero emissions by 2050?
Well, I think if you go down that path, what you're going to do is send factories and industries offshore, send manufacturing jobs offshore. So that's not the Australian way.
So that's a no?
Regional Australia is more than doing... Well, regional Australia is more than doing its fair share as far as making sure that we have lower emissions. And, of course, we don't know what technologies are going to be invented over the next 30 years. It's a long way down the track to 2050. But what I want to make sure and what the Nationals are working towards is making sure we have reliable, affordable energy. And I know Angus Taylor, that's his goal. I know for Scott Morrison, that's his goal. That's the goal of the entire government.
Trent Zimmerman today is quoted in The Guardian saying that he wants to support this 2050 net zero emissions target. It sounds like you're going to take the opposite view.
Well, sure, I'm not the member for North Sydney, and good luck to Trent Zimmerman. What I want to make sure is there is reliable, affordable power. What I want to make sure, and opposition members have said this too, that there is a future for Labor. Heavens knows they've got their own little ginger group now, a rebel group within Parliament, pushing the merits of coal.
We're going to talk about that later. Just on this idea, though, the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, says we must cut emissions to net zero by 2050 to avoid a global temperature rise of more than 1.5 degrees. Do you accept that?
The IPCC is not governing Australia. The Liberals and Nationals are. We took our climate policies, we took our emission reductions policies, we took all of those to the election last May, and we were re-elected. The Australian people have spoken. We're not run by international organisations. We're run by Australians. We're run by Scott Morrison, and we're run by myself. And we're run by the Liberals and Nationals. You've got to listen to the scientists. We've got hard-working... Well, of course you've got to listen to the scientists, but what you've also got to do is listen to the workers. Listen to those workers who put on a high-vis vest and go and work hard in a coal mine every day. Those people in central and northern Queensland who rely on the resources sector for a job, for a future. And let's face it, coal provides $66 billion of exports, 55,000 jobs and 2/3 of our energy needs. Why wouldn't we want to support that important sector?
A couple of other things. One of the biggest problems in regional areas right now, as I'm sure you know, is underemployment, people who can't get enough work. This is a particular problem in National Party seats in those regional areas, some of the highest levels of underemployment in places like Cowper, Tweed, New England and so on. And look, underemployment is a problem that's worsened under your watch. What have you been doing about it?
Well, the drought hasn't helped, David, and certainly the bushfires haven't either. But we're making sure that we increase the skill sets of particularly young Australians. We're making sure, and the December jobless figures were very good. We had a drop in the unemployment levels.
But and what we want to
make sure is that, what we want to make sure is that for those people in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane watching this show, as I'm sure they should be, that we want to make sure we get the message out there that regional Australia is not broken. There is a great future to be had in regional Australia. I saw a report the other day talking about the lack of an Australian backyard. Well, you can buy a house with a backyard anywhere in regional Australia at an affordable cost, and I encourage people to take that tree change, to look at a regional area, because there are jobs, there are opportunities out here. Great place to live and work and invest.
OK, you're right about that. Can I ask you finally about the grant schemes? One that you were in charge of, certainly before the election in particular. This is the $150 million female facilities and water safety stream, meant for female change rooms and swimming pools. The incoming government brief clearly states this money was allocated in the budget for, quote, regional development. It says the stakeholders are regional and remote communities. But very little went to regional communities. Less than 10% has gone to National Party seats. In fact, some of those seats got nothing at all. Most of it went to Liberal-held seats, marginal Liberal-held seats. About $113 million went to Liberal seats. Why didn't more of this money meant for regional Australia go to regional Australia?
Well, regional Australia doesn't miss out under the Nationals being in government.
I'm asking under this scheme that you administered. Were you rolled on this?
Absolutely not, and I'm pleased that the delivery for female change rooms has been such that under the program that Bridget McKenzie ran, under the programs that my...
Sorry, Minister, I'm asking about the female facilities and water safety stream under your administration. Why did the money largely go to the cities?
And over a spread, you will see that regional Australia and metropolitan Australia all receives fair and equitable funding when it comes to providing...
Is less than 10% of the funding fair and equitable?
Change rooms. Well, what we want to make sure is that there is this sort of funding, and you can do it when you've got a balanced economy. When you can do it when you've got an economy working towards...
I'm asking whether less than 10% for these National Party seats is fair.
Well, I'm sure in future rounds that regional Australia will get more than just 10%.
The money's nearly spent from this program.
Is that we are providing funding for regional areas, for metropolitan areas, and female participation in sport is growing. I'm pleased that I'm here in Wagga Wagga, where AFLW, women's competition of AFL, is a huge and booming sport. And we're providing the sort of funding for that, for netball, for soccer, whatever girls want to play, we're making sure that they're getting the change rooms, they're getting the facilities that boys have always enjoyed. And why is it fair that women have to change in cars and behind trees when the boys have proper toilet and bathroom facilities to play their sport?
All right. Michael McCormack, Deputy Prime Minister, thanks for joining us.